During a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, a visibly fed up Joe Rogan called out the incompetence of the Trump administration to the face of his guest, shadow president and unelected MAGA billionaire Elon Musk, who in turn was visibly chagrined by the criticism. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, this is a pretty shocking development when you consider the fact that Joe Rogan is a big fan of Donald Trump and, in particular, Elon Musk. So when criticisms come from, a man who is at various points either the most or second most popular podcaster in the world, who is ideologically predisposed to grade you on a curve, that has to hit hard. And Joe Rogan seemed fed up when he called out the Trump administration's incompetence to Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, who is well known for his bravado on Twitter, also visibly struggled in a chagrined way to try to defend the Trump administration.
It's so frustrating to be sitting in a situation where the list isn't coming out.
Well, it better come out, hopefully tomorrow.
Why'd they release bullshit today?
I don't know.
What's the point in giving these people a happy folder to wave around in front of the camera with nothing in it that's new? It doesn't make any sense. It's not encouraging.
Like I said, it's the tough thing that they've got is, they've been made captain of a ship with a hostile crew.
So let's just think about this, okay? Specifically, Joe Rogan is talking about the failed backfiring stunt that was the release of the so-called Epstein files. And we've covered this in a couple of videos, and we're going to do a follow-up here with the latest developments. But this was a big deal. This was a major screw-up by the Trump administration, and it was so bad, as we discussed in a previous video, that even people who are much more MAGA than Joe Rogan, people like Laura Loomer and others, were publicly lashing out at the Trump administration for how they botched the handling of this, the publicity stunt behind it, by giving, quote-unquote fake binders to Mike Cernovich, Libs of TikTok, Jack Posobiec, DC Drano, and others, knowing apparently that much of the information in those binders was basically a regurgitation of things that we already knew. There were no bombshells, there were no revelations, and it got so bad, folks, I should say, before I get to that, on top of that, MAGA lawmakers like Jim Jordan and Republicans in Congress, they did a Rickroll. We also covered that in a video as well. They shared a link. Oh my God, the Epstein files have been released, and it linked to a video of 80s pop star Rick Astley and singing his big hit, Never Gonna Give You Up. Again, a decade, 15-year-old meme, which made light of all the crimes that Jeffrey Epstein committed, as well as the thirst for information and revelation about the so-called Epstein files, particularly on the right. So it was the worst possible screw-up. And it was so bad that even Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was basically the key player in this, in the sense that she was the one who went on Fox News and elsewhere and said, hey, listen, I've got the Epstein files on my desk, and I'm going through them, and there's some bombshells in here. There's some shocking stuff. You're going to get it tomorrow. And then these MAGA influencers go to the White House, these handpicked MAGA influencers, they get these binders. The content of these binders was not released to the public or to, quite frankly, MAGA lawmakers. Anna Paulina Luna, a MAGA Republican congresswoman from Florida, who was also trying to work on the release of the Epstein files from Congress. She blasted the White House. She blasted the Trump administration for this. Basically, it was obfuscation, it was misdirection, it was deceit every which way. And it raised more questions than answers. And then, of course, once the reporting came out that it was basically a botched bullshit publicity stunt, then you have Attorney General Pam Bondi issue this letter, which was released to the public, to Patel, the deranged MAGA cultist who is now at the head of the FBI. This is what MAGA Attorney General Pam Bondi had to say to her subordinate, MAGA FBI Director Kash Patel, after the failure of this stunt that Joe Rogan is complaining about. Dear Director Patel, before you came into office, I requested the full and complete files related to Jeffrey Epstein. In response to this request, I received approximately 200 pages of documents, which consisted primarily of flight logs, Epstein's list of contacts, and a list of victims' names and phone numbers. I repeatedly questioned whether this was the full set of documents responsive to my request and was repeatedly assured by the FBI that we had received the full set of documents. Late yesterday, I learned from a source that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein. Despite my repeated requests, the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files. When you and I spoke yesterday, you were just as surprised as I was to learn this new information. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, which was Friday, February 28th, the FBI will deliver the full and complete Epstein files to my office, including all records, documents, audio and video recordings, and materials related to Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, regardless of how much information was obtained. There will be no withholdings or limitations to my or your access. The Department of Justice will ensure that any public disclosure of these files will be done in a manner to protect the privacy of victims and in accordance with the law, as I've done my entire career as prosecutor. I'm also directing you to conduct an immediate investigation into why my order to the FBI was not followed. You will deliver to me a comprehensive report of your findings and proposed personnel action within 14 days. I appreciate your immediate attention to this important matter. I know that we are both committed to transparency for the American people, and I look forward to continuing with you to serve our president and our country. So she's pissed. She's pissed at the FBI, and she seems at least a little bit pissed at Kash Patel as well, because this happened on his watch, also happened on her watch. And MAGA is pissed in general, but in terms of specifics, because of course, some of them are mad at Trump, but because it's a cult, they're much more likely to scapegoat somebody, and so they're really pissed at Pam Bondi. In fact, many MAGA influencers are publicly calling for her resignation as a consequence of this. And again, this is the sort of thing that Joe Rogan is complaining about. Now, I would argue the incompetence goes well beyond the Jeffrey Epstein situation. Doge itself, the guy that Rogan is talking to, Elon Musk, is the embodiment of incompetence, right? There's a reason that his polling is in the toilet. Musk is unpopular. He is increasingly unpopular. He is increasingly unpopular even among Republicans who don't like his attitude, his own the libs attitude, right? Where that seems to be all he cares about. The troll shit on social media, his dishonesty, his unparalleled dishonesty, matched only by Donald Trump. His incompetence in general with all the high-profile failures of Doge, and also the sinister level of influence that Musk has over Trump, which also seems unchecked. So, as far as I'm concerned, again, this visibly fed-up Joe Rogan could have gone much harder on Elon Musk. But even now, even though he's frustrated, he's grading Musk on a curve, he's grading Trump on a curve because he's effectively co-signed their administration. Now, I wish Joe Rogan would close his eyes and pretend it was a liberal he was talking to or a Democrat and hold them to the same standard, but he won't do that. So it says something that despite all of the reasons to favor Musk and to cover for Musk and Trump, Joe Rogan is obviously pissed about the Epstein stunt in particular. There's a really good article as well in the Washington Post I want to take a look at here. Pam Bondi's Jeffrey Epstein stunt reveals populism's limits. The Attorney General's promised revelations about Epstein's associations were a dud. Trump is president for a second time because Americans have lost trust in institutions, and he has stacked his administration with populist bomb throwers. Now they're in a position to actually prove the claims of elite perfidy that they have indulged and encouraged. But what if they can't? Witness the embarrassing spectacle of the Trump Justice Department's choreographed release of the Epstein files. Epstein was a wealthy sexual predator who died, apparently by suicide, in a New York jail in 2019. I'll point out, again, this is important. In 2019, who was president? Donald Trump. In 2019, who was Donald Trump's attorney general? Bill Barr. When Epstein was in federal custody, whose responsibility was it ultimately to protect him? Ultimately, Bill Barr and Donald Trump. And he died on Donald Trump's watch. I'll also point out, it's been well established that Epstein and Donald Trump were close associates for years. Food for thought. Epstein had pled guilty in 2008 to soliciting a minor in Florida, but served little time. Amid the hashtag #MeToo movement, accusations against him resurfaced and grew. He was arrested in 2019 on more sweeping charges of abusing teenage girls. After Epstein's death under unusual circumstances, theories understandably swirled. The most salacious claim, given Epstein's social connections to various famous and powerful people, including Presidents Bill Clinton and Trump, was that the government was concealing a client list of high-profile men who abused minors. The idea of the Epstein client list dovetails provocatively with the QAnon theory that says Trump is battling a depraved pedophiliac network of elites. At the very least, the cover-ups of such a list would point to deep state manipulations. Attorney General Pam Bondi asked darkly in November why A.G. Garland and the Justice Department are so quiet about Epstein. Again, why would Donald Trump and Bill Barr be so quiet about Epstein? Donald Trump was president until January 2021, January 20th, 2021 to be exact. And MAGA also purports that Donald Trump has the ability to psychically declassify things with the power of his mind. There has to be no procedure, no grace, no tact, no surgical precision Donald Trump can snap his fingers and the Epstein files, so-called Epstein files, could have been released, at least based on the documents they had at the time. And that didn't happen. Interesting. She teased the release of information on the case, and on Thursday, the administration invited right-wing social media personalities to receive the Epstein Files Part 1. They marched out of the White House brandishing folders with that title. Finally, the truth was poised to come out. But soon there was trouble. Despite the pageantry, it turned out the Justice Department gave the influencers largely stale information. The populist base that was supposed to be vindicated by the release of the Epstein files began to complain. Quote, what we were looking for was hidden from us, said one of the influencers, who is subverting POTUS, posted conservative media personality and former Fox News host Glenn Beck. He claimed that the White House believed law enforcement had the list, but was refusing to turn it over. And then it goes into the letter, which we just read. Patel had claimed a few months ago that the government was suppressing the Epstein files, quote, because of who's on that list. Perhaps the FBI director can now force the deep state to cough up. But as lawyer Ted Frank noted, a top law firm seeking compensation for Epstein's victims for years, quote, left no stone unturned and had every incentive to find co-conspirators. There are certainly many unanswered questions about Epstein's strange career and associations. But what is most likely happening here is that the populist media universe led on its followers with an exaggerated political tale, and the Bondi Justice Department is flailing as it tries to play along. This isn't the only, quote, dog that caught the car situation for the new administration. Dan Bongino, Trump's recently appointed deputy FBI director, has subscribed to the theory that the FBI knows who placed pipe bombs near the Republican and Democratic Party headquarters on January 6, 2021, even as the agency pretends not to. Bongino is now in an ideal position to finally apprehend the real culprit. Expect an arrest any minute. To be sure, the outsiders Trump has brought into government might well surface information relevant to the public that more establishment figures would prefer to keep hidden. Patel did this in Trump's first term when, as an investigator in the House of Representatives, he helped rebut the Russiagate smear. But the Epstein, by the way, I disagree with the whole Russiagate smear thing. I don't know who this author is, but he sounds like he's conservative in this respect, which, even though I disagree with him on this, might lend his critiques more credibility to people who are on the MAGA side. But the question is what will happen if narratives on matters such as the Epstein client list and the January 6 false flag operation simply fizzle despite the Trump administration's exertions. There are at least two possibilities. One is that the conspiracism will ease among the MAGA faithful. Another is that nihilism and mistrust will reach new levels if it appears that even such warriors as Bondi, Patel, and Bongino could be co-opted or outmaneuvered by the deep state. So, really good op-ed, all that's considered, pointing out the seemingly very likely dangers of this MAGA conspiracy theory that is beating within the MAGA movement. But yeah, again, Joe Rogan, one of the biggest high-profile supporters of Donald Trump and particularly Elon Musk, 6 weeks in, is fed up with their incompetence. And again, look at how browbeaten and chagrined Elon Musk was. And he's like, well, you know, they're captains with a treacherous crew. Buddy, that's a bullshit excuse. The fact of the matter is you guys are in charge now, which means everything bad that happens on your watch is your fault by the standard you tried to impose on the Democrats. And by the way, we should ruthlessly enforce that standard on you. Democrats should step up, continue to push that particular standard. And yeah, I think it says something where even Joe Rogan, who doesn't like to get confrontational with guests, liberal or conservative, is calling you out for your incompetence. So in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.